Hello and welcome to the DATAcated Show. My name is Kate Stashne and I'll be your host today. I'm also the founder of DATAcated, a company focused on delivering media partnerships for data analytics, AI, and machine learning clients. Now, today we're going to talk about governed data delivery for GenAI. We know that there is a lot of excitement about GenAI, and we also know that data governance is important. And so I'm really thrilled that today we're going to cover both of those topics and sort of what it takes from a data governance perspective to help GenAI succeed in terms of implementation in your company. Now, with me here, and I'm going to bring him up in just a second, is we have a guest. His name is Kevin Petrie. He is the VP of Research at Eckerson Group. And I'm really excited to chat with him. I've been following him on LinkedIn, so really thrilled to bring him up on stage. Before I do that, just a quick reminder that if you have any questions or comments, please put them into the LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter chat, and we'll try to address as many as we can. All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring Kevin up on our stage here. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kate. Great to be here.
Yay, I'm excited to see you. Excited to go live here. And where are you based, actually?
Based near Portland, Maine.
Maine. How far is that from New Jersey?
A little too far. It's about 300 miles, 250 miles.
Too far for what, though? That's relative.
For a day trip.
For a day
I used
trip.
to live in New York, right in Manhattan. And the Bay
In
Area.
Manhattan? When was that?
Yeah, that was actually late 90s. Yep, I was on the Upper
That's
East
when I
Side.
moved to New York from Tajikistan.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
96.
Okay. Yeah, I had a good time there. It's a fun place to be young.
Yeah.
So it was good.
Questionable sometimes. Depends.
Questionable. There were some questionable moments, but it was good.
Depends where. So we're here to talk about governed data delivery and GenAI. But before we get into the topic, I'd love for you to take a minute and just tell people who's Kevin, what's Eckerson Group, what is it that you guys do, and a bit about yourself.
Excellent. Thank you. So I run the research group at Eckerson Group. We're a boutique research and consulting firm that helps organizations get more value from their data. So the research organization, we write thought leadership reports, we write best practices, ultimate guides to products, and essentially help data leaders modernize their environments and figure out how to navigate the new world of AI, and especially GenAI. On the consulting side, we also work closely with a lot of mid-sized and enterprise accounts or clients to help them build a data strategy and put it into place. And that involves a lot of things like advanced analytics, including AI and GenAI, as well as data governance.
Great. And how long have you been at Eckerson Group?
So I've been here a little over 4 years. I was a client of Eckerson Group and courted Wayne for a few years before that. I was on the vendor side, so I was with Attunity, which was acquired by Click in product marketing, and I ran a technical field training call for about 5 years. Great experience. Prior to that was with EMC and also with Samarkey, or excuse me, with Norton Antivirus. It was a good group.
Okay, nice. So 4 years ago, that was around when COVID was in full swing, right? That must have been
It was good timing. I joined a virtual company on January 5th. COVID went prime time on March 13th, and we became fashionable. Telecommuters, all of us.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're here to talk about data governance and generative AI. So I think it's good to first define the two terms, right? How would you define data governance? What does that entail? We always hear like, oh, there's data quality, and then there's policies and data lineage sometimes. And Gen AI is, people think it's ChatGPT, right? So why don't you go ahead and define those two terms, and then we'll get into it.
Okay, great. So GenAI, generative AI is a fast emerging and evolving variant of artificial intelligence. GenAI kind of started more in 2014 with generative adversarial networks, or GANs, which are two different neural networks that would compete with each other to generate, for example, a deepfake video. Those are getting pretty effective, as we know. 2017 or thereabouts, Google came out with kind of a groundbreaking paper talking about transformer architectures, or ways in which you could have neural networks that start to generate content based on what they learn about the ways that words or images relate to each other. Then in 2022, at the end of 2022, as we know, OpenAI kind of stunned the world with its release of ChatGPT, I think version 3.5, which is essentially based on a neural network where you have, you're looking at breaking down, for example, text into lots of tokens or words and chunks of words, and figuring out using a massive calculator to figure out quantitatively how all these things relate to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, they studied everything they could find that was worthy on the internet and developed this massive calculator to start to interpret text and generate text. Now it's being applied to video, to audio, and images, and so forth. So essentially, it's a way to interpret and generate content with pretty dazzling sophistication and speed for a wide range of use cases. The accuracy, it works sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't.
Depends what you use it for, right?
Yes.
I use it for having conversations with at some point. We were joking that that's one of my employees earlier.
Yes.
It definitely helps. It's sometimes wrong, but at least there's an answer, right?
I agree. I sort of view it as a 20-year-old that got 1,600 on the SATs, 200 IQ, really eager to please and really smart, but very little common sense. So they need careful oversight because they'll just draw the wrong conclusions based on a little bit of information.
But they're also very confident in their.
Oh yes, they are. Yes.
All right, so
yes,
we've got
that's
GenAI
GenAI.
covered.
Yep. That was a long-winded definition. Data governance. Okay, so we work with a large community of folks that are very focused on data governance and have been for decades. And data governance, as I was describing before we started, it's kind of like eating your vegetables. It sounds like you're a better vegetable eater than me. Most people don't want to do it because it's not that fun. But data governance is essentially people and process and technology to use data responsibly. And it's got a lot of different elements to it. It's figuring out what people are involved in different aspects of creating policies and then enforcing and adhering to policies. They have a lot of rules associated with them. You can do this with this data. You cannot do that with that data. Some of the technologies that go along with that are data quality observability, data access controls, role-based access controls, reporting, cataloging, master data management. And all of that really should be part of a coherent data governance program. So the companies are reducing the risk with getting things wrong or doing things that are illegal or doing things that are insecure. And so there's been this big forcing function with GDPR in Europe and now various state laws in the US, like the California Consumer Privacy Act, that are forcing people to get serious about their data and only do explicitly authorized things with customer data as a starting point.
Or else you pay money, right? That's the.
Or else you pay money, or else you have to tell all your customers embarrassing things about what you've done. And that's been good. That's been a good motivator. But it is hard because there are a lot of bad guys out there who want to expose your data and won't hesitate to do it. My health insurance company was a victim of a ransomware attack that shut down their website for probably 3 months last year. Made things very inconvenient.
It is scary when you get those emails from a bank or something like, "Oh, we've had a data breach," and you're like, "What now?"
What do I do?
Yeah, you don't have many options. You just sort of sit tight and let us figure it out. Hopefully.
Yes, it makes it fun.
Oh, yes, very fun. So going back to GenAI for a minute, people are excited, right? ChatGPT came out. Everyone's like, "Oh my God, I'm using AI now for everything." But when we talk realistically for organizations, where would you say we are on the maturity scale or adoption scale of actually using GenAI to do real work, not like create funny pictures or write poems that are so terrible and clearly written by ChatGPT. So everybody stop writing poems with ChatGPT. It's always obvious, but yeah, where would you say we are?
Yeah, I found last year that ChatGPT was good for probably 5 bedtime stories for my 9-year-old at the time. After that, it wasn't so good. The novelty wore off. But okay, so we're in early days. I figured there are 3 stages and they overlap a lot. The first was that knowledge workers and consumers started using ChatGPT to improve productivity. In sort of an ungoverned format, it's getting a little more governed. That was stage 1. And now you've got various vendors, software companies of all types that are baking GenAI features into their own products. That's stage 2. That's happening as well. So you've got GitHub with their Copilot. You've got Einstein within Salesforce. You've got Joule within SAP and so forth. The third wave, which is underway, is where it gets interesting, because now companies are starting to take language models, often pre-trained ChatGPT or Bloom from Hugging Face or others, and apply it to their own domain-specific data in order to not just boost productivity, but also gain competitive advantage based on their own domain-specific data. And I think that's where it becomes really important to get the governance down and think hard about your data governance program, extending it to address GenAI so that you can enable governed data delivery.
Okay, so just to reiterate, you've got 3 phases. One is improving productivity, just sort of being more efficient and helping us do some of the tasks that GenAI is good at. It is good at doing a lot of things, actually. That
You
would
can
have
save your
taken
time.
me. Yeah, I know people are poking fun at it, like, oh, I gave it a math problem and I got it wrong and I tricked it. Like, okay, great. You wasted everyone's time, including your own, trying to trick AI, but use it for what it's supposed to be used for and it will do the job, right? So then I have seen plenty of vendors bake in sort of, we all have ChatGPT now, and some are doing it better than others. Some are just saying they're doing it and they're not actually doing it, and others are actually using it. I saw an example just what's today, Wednesday, yeah, earlier this week. I always get confused with weeks. I won't go into detail, but it blew me away. I'm like, whoa, we could do this now. Like, they're going to be announcing this soon. But it was really cool stuff. People are really using this kind of technology. And
Yeah.
phase 3, you said, is domain specific, creating sort of their own ChatGPT within their own domain specific data. What's phase 4? Are we just like all sitting with our Apple Vision Pro zoned out somewhere with a feeding tube and AI is doing it all for us?
We get Elon Musk to
Oh, yeah, the
implant
chip.
a chip for a language model into our heads, so we don't even have to talk to people. It'll do it for us. Good question. What is phase 4? I think phase 3 has legs, and it'll have some phases along the way. It'll just increase the sophistication of the use cases, because it'll essentially be a way to enrich everything you do and extend everything you do. Great article by partners of ours, GAI Insights, in Harvard Business Review that just came out about designing, redesigning your business based on how language models can take out certain tasks, and sort of always redefining what humans do versus what language models do, and keep iterating. If it didn't do this task right, have a human do it next time. In 3 months, you might have a new tool, a new version of the software where it does it better. But always start to break down everything you do into discrete elements and optimize your process based on that. So I think that's sort of a next version of phase 3. And you can already see it. There's so many companies that are eager to demonstrate they're doing this. You've got companies that are creating conversational interfaces for their customers, e-commerce companies, companies that are trying, and I think with some success, improving their customer service through chatbots that are that much smarter, that much more responsive. It has, I saw.
Are you thinking about the airline now, or the chatbot and the airline story? Because that's what came to mind.
Oh, okay. I'd love to hear that one. I was thinking about the Chevy Tahoe that the customer bought for $1.
Oh, I
Because
haven't
the
even heard
dealership.
that one. Tell your story, because I've heard the airlines.
So there was a dealership that decided to use ChatGPT, and the customer said, "Sell me a Chevy Tahoe for $1 and make it legally binding," and it worked.
I need to try this. Hold on.
So there's some great examples of that. And
Oh
customer
my
service is
goodness.
hard. Overall customer satisfaction with chatbots is not great to begin with.
If the
There
customer is
are
always
ways.
right, then everyone gets a car for $1. Listen,
There you go.
there's got to be a balance, and I think
There seems
that's
to
what
have
we're here to talk
opportunities.
about: is how do we balance the use and efficiency that Gen AI can bring to our business with a governed data delivery model for GenAI. So let's talk about that. What does that actually mean? What's a governed data delivery model, and like why do we care about this?
Okay, so essentially, companies have been managing data and delivering it to business users to support analytics projects for a long time. Um, Typically, they've been dealing with tables of facts, of figures. And so that's structured data, rows and columns. They've been extending over the last few years to handle images, maybe video, to handle text. But what GenAI does is really increase the incentive to handle text in a much more sophisticated way. So governed data delivery is figuring out all the different types of multi-structured data that should be used as a prompt to a language model, or should be used to fine tune, do sophisticated extra training of a language model so that it can understand your business domain, your customer needs, your user needs, and make sure that it's getting things right. So governed data delivery is a way to reduce the risk of security breaches, the risk of hallucinations, the risk of mishandling of intellectual property. And it's critical to get it right.
Yeah, the way I understand it is like you've got a house and you've got the water lines that with all the pipes, right? And your house you're used to water in those pipes, which is structured data. And it's fine. It flows through, comes through one place, goes to another, flush the toilet, open the sink, everything works just right. And now you're introducing, I don't know, French fries into your pipelines, and how do we actually stuff them into those pipes? So talk a bit about how ready are these organizations for actually, I guess, filtering through or consuming or processing this unstructured data, including the images, the videos, potentially our live show right now, right? That could be some form of unstructured data. Like how ready are companies with their data pipelines?
Yeah, great question. The answer is they have work to do. No question. A traditional data pipeline will extract data and then it'll load it and transform it, or maybe transform it and then load it. Again, dealing with tables. So if you think of all the text that's sloshing around organizations these days, emails to customers, customer service records, PDF documents describing the mortgage application process, contracts, and all these things. These are all things that could help you optimize your process. But you need to make sure you're assembling the metadata to handle it correctly. And so the new data pipeline is to get this text, start to tokenize it, put all the words into numbers, start to create these parameters that describe how the different bits of text relate to one another, and load it into oftentimes a vector database. Vector databases, I have a report coming out about this, are becoming very popular because if you can get your text, as an example, into a vector database, you can start to have a numerical representation that can feed a language model. Maybe it'll be what's called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, which essentially means if the user asks the language model something, RAG says, so the customer says, tell me about product capability X or Y. It'll pull up that product guide and put it into the prompt. So then you're giving the language model an open book test, and it's probably going to get it right. RAG
So
is
giving it more context.
Exactly. You're giving it a lot more context, so it gets it right. There's also fine tuning, which helps you train a pre-trained language model more effectively, to understand the nuances of ways in which your organization works, maybe the nuances of the ways in which lawyers use language or doctors use language, things like that. So between fine-tuning and RAG, you've got this need to take your text, put it into a vector database, and feed it up to these language models. And that chain of events is really about governed data delivery. A lot of governance things you attach to it, but that's the mechanical process of preparing the stuff.
Got it. And as you're mentioning all of these PDFs and all these other types of data, it made me think about storage, because how does that also impact how we store that data? Do we have to actually transform all of that into numbers, like all the video content and the text?
So it essentially becomes vectors,
Right.
or numbers in the vector database. and you want to make sure you get it right and you describe those things correctly. So there's a lot of new startups that are doing some cool things to help you describe those vectors and make sure the numbers really represent reality.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. I love seeing all this stuff. All right. So when I was before our call, I was doing some research and I came across an article that you posted about. So then I read that article and went down another rabbit hole. That tends to happen because all of this stuff is so interesting.
A lot of
But
rabbit holes.
yes, we could talk about rabbits too. I'm in New Jersey. We've got rabbits, and Easter's coming. But anyway, so the article was data governance in the era of Gen AI, and it was
Yes.
by Dharma Kutanar. And in that article, he mentioned that there's two potential angles here that we need to think through. One was how does data governance support or add value to Gen AI? And then the other lens was how does Gen AI support or add value to data governance? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on those two angles.
Yeah, great. Dharma is one of our talented contributors to Eckerson Group. And so I really enjoyed getting his article onto our site and working with him. Essentially, you can use Gen AI to support data governance by, for example, automatically documenting data sets. Atlan, for example, and other catalog companies are helping automatically describe data sets and putting that into the catalog so people can figure out how to govern their data through the auto-generated descriptions. You need to have a user make sure they got it right, an expert user, but it can help productivity quite a bit. So that's one of many ways in which Gen AI makes it easier to govern data. The flip side is you need to govern data in order to support Gen AI. And that gets to the pipeline that I was talking about before, and also the need to ensure when you convert stuff to vectors, that's what actually lands in the vector database. You need to make sure that only the right users are using the data in the right ways. So it's a symbiotic relationship. It's a yin yang. Pick your metaphor, but it's really important to realize that both these things can help each other.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot more attention being given to data governance and data quality because of the capabilities that Gen AI can provide an organization. Like, oh,
Yeah,
you want to use this? Well, you got to do that first, right? It makes sense, and it's something that companies should have been doing for since the beginning of their data collection times. But I think this does provide a good push and excitement around getting the data right to begin with.
I think so too.
Um,
Um,
we had a question here from Payush. He's asking, do you think the AI is going to reduce developers and testers count at projects?
so I don't think so. As a case in point, I did a survey on LinkedIn, got 300 votes. That it was saying, okay, data engineers, these are in part developers, um, is the demand for data engineers going to go up or down in 2024? Because Gen AI, among other things, is creating demand for more data, but
Mm-hmm.
it could also automate parts of their job. 90% of respondents voted the demand for data engineers is going up. And so I think that the need for productivity for developers and data engineers is only going up. There's more and more and more you want to do with software, more and more and more you want to do with data. And in a sense, the robots are arriving just in time to help the humans get the work done.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think the testers as well, right? You were just saying that we have to
Yeah,
transform all that unstructured data into vectors, and someone has to test if this thing is right. We can't just assume, although we'd love to assume everything is right. Probably should.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So
And so Gen AI can help with the testing, but you still need the expert human inspecting what they're doing and making sure they're getting it right.
I know Gen AI can do it all. They can test it, they can document it, they could tell you your data lineage, and then but then you still need the human to verify and validate all of that.
Yeah, and I think that'll be true for a while. There are some really aggressive CEOs who are saying it'll automate all kinds of things and you don't need human in the loop. I think in most cases you need a human in the loop in a big way for the near term.
That could be a good poll just to see what people are thinking. Do we need a human in the
Yeah,
loop?
it could.
I think so. What else are we going to be doing? I think it's important to
It
give
is.
humans something to do. Yeah.
Absolutely. I was using ChatGPT to summarize text responses to a survey that we're working on with our partner Bark. fast, sophisticated, good grammar. But I went back and I started inspecting it, and it did help with my productivity, but it required careful line editing for accuracy. And I think that's, one of many examples.
Yeah, I used it once to I needed a list of like the top 30 data conferences that are happening in the United States because I wanted to write an article about it. And
Oh
I
yeah,
said, provide sources and add links for registration and add dates and add locations. It gave me a beautiful layout. But guess what? I had to test every single link because at least half of those links were totally made up. It was like
I found that too.
dataconference.com. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right. So definitely have to trust but verify and then trust it more after you correct it. So
Yeah, and that kind of thing, they need to get so much better. You really need a smart librarian that knows where to take you to find the right book.
yeah.
That kind of basic Google search capability has to be.
Well, now, and I forgot exactly who said it. It was in one of my DATAcated shows. We do so many, I tend to lose track. But he was
I'm
saying that
sure.
now so many people are creating content using ChatGPT, posting it on their blogs and other people's blogs on websites that are searchable by Google. So when you're trying to verify ChatGPT on Google, it finds an article written by ChatGPT. So it's sort of this not great loop where you're just not getting you don't know where to go for the truth anymore.
That's true. It's kind of a hall of mirrors. You're looking at your own
So
images and not finding the original.
you have to
Huh.
really look at the sources and see if you can trust them. But sometimes even trusted sources, they'll use ChatGPT, and it's interesting. But we all have to be, I guess, more skeptical and look at things with a special lens of, is this true or is this not true?
Yeah. And who knows? Maybe it'll make us more conservative and go to trusted publications, and
Yeah,
we won't just listen to random people on the internet and try to go to more trusted news sources, as an example.
I
We can
wouldn't
hope.
stretch it that far. People will still believe a random Facebook post and say, "Did you see what happened?" I'm like, that never actually happened. Please stop listening to your social media. Like, the world is ending. I mean, of course, the world is ending. It's ending every day, little by little. It's um,
You can always find it crazy.
yeah. Exactly. So one thing that I guess I'm hoping will help us move towards a better state and a more trusted state is regulations, right? Because we've seen
Yeah.
that work for cybersecurity and data privacy, like you mentioned, GDPR, where organizations have no choice but to make sure that they at least try to protect customer data. And in this case, I wanted to talk about how regulations, just like the EU Act, the EU AI Act, or I guess there are some similar ones coming to the United States as well. How do they either help or hinder progress for Gen AI and then also for data governance?
Um, Great question. So the EU, as we know, has kind of led the charge in some of the tech regulation. They came out with GDPR a few years before California and other states followed, or at least
Mhm.
a year or so. Um, and so it's not unlikely that the US will follow suit in some way. And what they're doing is, among other things, defining different tiers of risk for specific use cases of AI. Um, and some things are banned outright, like indiscriminate videotaping and video recognition of faces. Um, but they'll also have things that are carefully regulated but enabled, such as use of AI to help a doctor diagnose something, or use of facial recognition software to assist law enforcement. So that's where you have close human governance. And then there'll be some things that they'll just let pass through use of AI. And so I think that it's likely that the US would have a similar set of tiers, and organizations have every incentive, I think, to abide by this, um, even if they're not legally required to right now, because organizations have no desire to upset their customers, to undermine trust, and things that they do eventually will be exposed. There is certainly a lot of um, less than transparent activity about what happens, how our phones are watching us, even or listening to us, even when they're in idle and so forth. But I think more and more, iPhone is listening right now. More and more, that'll become transparent, and companies, I think, will need to pull back a little bit. That's my optimistic view. I've been accused of being overly optimistic.
I'm also optimistic, but I also think people are still going to do whatever they want. Like if you know your phone is listening, and let's say Apple comes out or whoever comes out and says, "Yeah, we're watching you 24/7 and we're listening to you 24/7," are you going to throw your phone away? Tell me, Kevin, are you throwing it away?
Probably not. It's kind of an appendage now. It's remarkable how
You
much
saw how
they've
quickly
changed.
we both found our phone, and we're doing a live show here. Why do we need our
I
phone
know.
right now? It's right there. So
It's true. It's face down, but still.
it's
Yes.
face down. That's important. But still, like even when companies tell you, "Hey, you're gonna download this app, but we're gonna track your location forever," do you still want this app? People usually don't even read the text, and they're like, "Yeah, sure, I accept. Whatever. Track.
Yep.
Where am I going?" Right. So I am optimistic that the regulations will make the companies a bit more careful and hopefully use the data in better ways for good. But I still think I'm a pessimist when it comes to humans of realizing the risks, and myself included. It's just like, okay, whatever. Everyone
Yep.
else has a phone. I'll have a phone. So we sort of just go with it.
And that's true. Yeah, I think you raise a good point. And it is telling that Sam Altman and I believe Mark Zuckerberg have asked for regulation,
Hmm.
because if they're just relying on free market principles to get the biggest dollar and beat the competition to the punch, they'll keep doing everything they're allowed to.
Yeah.
They can't unilaterally pull back. They need regulations to make them.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And last question on this is: do you think that, let's say if tomorrow we see a huge announcement that there are major regulations coming to the US, for example, with an 18 to 24-month implementation, because they usually give so much time. Sometimes like, oh, you have 10 years, you have 10 years to implement this.
Yeah.
Where I think it could be stricter. Do you think that's going to slow down progress significantly for Gen AI projects?
Um, Good question. Maybe a little bit, but that's good because there's been a real arms race that was triggered starting with the release of ChatGPT, I think version 3.5 in November. Companies are rushing to demonstrate how cutting edge and avant garde they are with this stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
then they end up doing things like getting lawyers fired or selling cars for $1. And so I think that the legislation could be a good way to instill more trust in the public and therefore customers. There's a Pew Research survey that came out last year, late last year, and I think they said that a majority of Americans, a slight majority, are more distrustful of AI than they are optimistic about its benefits.
Okay.
Um, and so
Hmm.
there's a lot of concern in the customer base and the general public to justify some regulation and maybe increase adoption because they're more confident that it's safe adoption.
That's true. If there's a regulation, the assumption would be, not sure how true or logical would be to have that assumption is, okay, it's safer now, it's better now, it's more accurate now. Like there's some regulation around it, so you would build that trust with the general public. And interesting,
Yeah,
interesting.
I know, and everyone knows the feds and governments. I don't think move fast enough to regulate social media. Hopefully, they could get ahead of it. That's a lot to ask of the government this time around. We'll see.
Yes, let's stay optimistic and hopeful. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for being on the DATAcated Show. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about data governance, about Gen AI. I can't wait to see where this train takes us next. But it is an exciting time to be alive and watch all of these things unfold. So thanks again for being on the DATAcated Show. Where can people go to learn more, to follow you? Are you on LinkedIn, Twitter?
Yeah, Kate, this is a great pleasure and privilege. Thank you very much. I do a lot on LinkedIn, daily post, and so if you look for me there, I would love to hear from you, feedback on this conversation. We work with a lot of companies to help them with data strategies, help them with governed data delivery for Gen AI. So let us know if we can help, but also just engage in a dialogue.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, everybody,
Great.
stay dedicated. Thanks for joining the show.